Hello and welcome to Table Talk. My name is Aaron Kornblit. I'm going to be your expert for the next hour, helping you learn about Airtable and specifically about linked records. But first off, let me just kick this off by talking about what is Table Talk. So Table Talk is our new weekly live stream where the community can gather and we're going to answer your Airtable questions. So every Thursday, I'm going to meet you right here and talk about one area of Airtable. Today, we're talking about linked records, and the agenda is going to be built by you by asking us questions. So since our first one, some housekeeping, if you will, I'd love to kick this off by learning more about you. So let me know in the chat where you're joining us from. Give me a first name. If this is your first time on a stream, welcome. Make sure to utilize the chat throughout. That's where I'm going to kind of be looking to for questions and making sure that I'm answering and teaching you what you need to know about Airtable. So our agenda, let's kick this off. So I've got about four questions that have been submitted beforehand around linked records, and that is where we're gonna start. And then we have Hallie here, a colleague who's gonna be curating questions throughout that we're gonna answer live as well. And then we're gonna end with a speed round, trying to make sure we answer as many of your questions as possible. So just looking at the chat, we've got Naya, we've got Ben, Alex, Chris, Abdi, so many folks. Really appreciate all of you joining. I'm really, really excited to kick this off, this new weekly live stream. Did I introduce myself? I don't remember. So Hallie is the one curating questions. My name is Aaron Kornblit. I'm on the education team at Airtable. Awesome. Got Hitch here. Really appreciate. We've got John. Appreciate. Thanks for joining as well. So with that, let me kind of jump into Airtable and start kind of showing you what questions we have been submitted around linked records, and then we're going to go into your questions as well. So with that, let me jump in. Hey, Michaela from Seattle. Appreciate you joining. Really excited. Okay, so we've got 4 questions from the group that have been submitted. Hallie's actually going to go ahead and drop a link if you have questions that you want to ask in the future. One thing I did forget to mention in the intro, first Table Talk, we're a little rusty here. We are going to be giving out swag. So my colleague Hallie, not Howie, Hallie is going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat where you can give us your email, and we're going to draw swag at the end of the stream. So let's go ahead and kind of let's go ahead and answer or talk about our agenda for today. So we've got 4 questions that were submitted. What is a linked record? Why you should use a linked record instead of a select field? Can you automatically link records? And how you can edit what you see in the linked record. So those are the first 4 questions that we're going to tackle around linked records. But feel free to drop some in the chat that Hallie is going to go ahead and add to our agenda for today. Okay, so first question is, what is a linked record? So I think this is an important one, so I'm going to come back to the main view. So a linked record is what allows you to create relationships in Airtable. And it's also one of those differentiating factors with a spreadsheet. So linked records allow you to say this is related to that, right? So an example of that is, let's say you're managing projects and every project has multiple tasks. And you want to be able to say, well, this project has these tasks, or these tasks are related to this project. So just one example of a relationship that we can communicate using linked records. Another might be, we have events. So we curate events every week, and we need to know which one of our customers or people are attending which event. So you can see we have events, and we have people that are attending those events. And we want to be able to say, this event has these attendees, and this attendee is going to this event or these events. And so really what linked records allow you to do is to create relationships, reduce adding redundant information, and really create that single source of truth throughout your workflow. So that was a little bit of theory. Let's actually go into the practice and kind of talk about what that relationship means in practice. Boom, so I'm back in my base. Let's jump to this creative projects base that I have open right here. And it's very simple. We have a bunch of projects around content. We're creating a training video. We're recording a podcast series. We're publishing blog posts. And we are launching a video ad campaign. And so for each one of these, we have a set of information that we're tracking. status, content type, priority, start date, and due date. And then in another table, we have our action items. So action items are the things we need to do for that piece of content to be completed. So if I'm looking at training videos, we have to write a script, we have to create graphics, we have to record a video. Publish blog posts, we have to align on publish date, write blog post 1, 2, 3. So those are just examples of action items that are related to content. Let me go ahead and add a new project, and this is where I'm going to kind of talk about linked records. So I'm notoriously bad at creating fake projects. So if you can help me in the chat with suggestions of what the tasks should be for this project, go ahead. So our first project is, let's say we're going to go ahead and, I don't know, start a stream. Feels appropriate. Or launch a stream. Feels very timely. So this one's upcoming. It's going to be a video. Priority is ultra high. People are excited. And then let's say the start date, 22nd, and let's say the 30th. So we have some information around that project. If I go over to action items, let me go ahead and create a empty view. So all action items. There we go. Launch a website. Next time, Michaela. That's a really good one. I'll keep that one in mind. Let's do that for the next one. I have another example coming up. Really appreciate that. I then have action items. So I need to build a set, right? We need to build everything around us. We need to buy a mic. And then we need to invite everyone. Those are the 3 simple steps to creating our stream. Now you'll notice that in our action items table, we have action items for every single project. What I would love to be able to do is say these specific action items are related to that stream project that I just created. Now in a spreadsheet, that would involve a lot of copy pasting and making sure that all of your lists are kind of in the same. You would have a list of projects in one place and another list of projects somewhere else. But because of linked records, so this field right here is a linked record. I can see that customize field type. It's a linked record to our content table. That means that whenever I click this plus button, I see all of my content, all of my projects that allow me to associate each task to its relevant project. Oh, right. Let me move myself out of the way. Apologies for that. Thanks, Ethan. There we go. So now let me just show that again. Appreciate that, Ethan. So you can see our 3 tasks right here, our action items. And then here in projects, when I click this plus button, boom, I see all of my records from my content table. So these are all of the different projects that we're working on. So we have create training video 1, and then here we have that launch a stream. So this is automatic. Whenever you create a new record in your content table and you associate a field to that table, your list of projects or items in that table will be available. So now I can say this action item is related to this project. So launch a stream is related to build a set, or build a set is related to launch a stream. Let's do that one more time. When I need to go ahead and buy a mic, I can click the plus button. And here I can associate that action item to that project. Hey, Steve, welcome. Hey, Ethan, welcome as well. So if I go over to content, now if I go into that tasks field, I see those linked records are there automatically. So it creates a 2-way relationship. We have projects related to tasks, and I can see that right here. And then I have tasks related to project. So if I go over to content, just like before, if I click this plus button, if you've been following along, we should see action items right here. And that is exactly what we see. So the one invite everyone is our 3rd action item for launching a stream. I can go ahead and associate those 2. And now I've created that relationship between content and action items. What can you actually do once you link records? Well, then let's say we want to do all tasks by project, which is a different view where I can see all of my projects organized by, all my tasks organized by their relevant project. And throughout the stream, I'm going to show a few more things you can do, like calculate percentage, go ahead and pull information from one table to another. But let's start very easy. We started with what is a linked record. Let me know in the chat if that makes sense. Any additional questions just on our high level of what is a linked record. Hey folks, hey Ash, Amazing. I'm so great to see some familiar faces in here. So that was just what is a linked record. Cool. So I'm going to ask you, can I consider that one checked? Any questions that we have around what is a linked record? I'm going to go back into our little agenda over here, grab a glass of water. So Chris has a great question around how do we link to a subset of records? That is going to be question number 4, right? How do I edit what I see in the list? So Chris clearly seeing in the future, foreshadowing our next topic here. So with that, I'm going to consider this one checked. So we're going to consider this one done. Boom. We've updated that. Got our little confetti. Great job, everyone. Let's go drop some claps in the chat. Amazing. Okay, cool. So this one done. Our first question of Table Talk is completed. That was amazing. Great. Okay, so a question from Shani is, why should I use a linked record instead of a select field? So very common question, and actually a really good one. So let me actually use an example here. So let's imagine that, you know, our little projects are going extremely well, and we want to start tracking clients that are related to the content that we're creating. So we have a status, we have a video type, we have a priority, and let's imagine that we're an agency and we want to say this project is for this client. Now, a thing we might want to track is their name, right? So we want to say, hey, let's go create a single select that has a drop down of all of our clients that we can associate each project to. So let me go ahead and do that. Insert left. I'm going to create a new client field. It's going to go ahead and be a single select. Ooh, client names, tough. So I saw some, let me try to get inspired by the chat here for some names. So it's got Stevens Construction Company. Let's go Barcelona Express. Let's go, I am terrible at this. Connor Marketplace. And then let's go Hallie Video Store. I'm not sure. There we go. Those are our 4 clients. That's all the information we have. Boom, boom, boom. Let's create that field. And now we can associate or mark which project is associated to what client. Barcelona, Connor. Great. I'm hoping that makes sense. Okay, so now, you know, we can easily create, okay, well, I want to see my projects by client. Great, so let's go project by client and create a little group. So we just create a new view, it's unfiltered. Let's go group that by client. Makes sense, sounds good. However, if you're running a business, there's probably more information that you need for each one of your clients. Point of contact, address, email, right? You might want to see like what projects have we run in the past? How much on average have we billed each one of these projects? There's a lot more information than what's included in this single select, right? And so that's a distinction between using a single select field and a linked record. So single select is great when you just want to tag something. You want to say this project is urgent or it's low priority, or this project has this status. However, when you start saying, well, we want to track additional information. So for instance, when it comes to clients, right now, we only have their name. But what we probably want is email, address, things like that. So in those situations where you need additional information to tag each one of your projects by, well, in your mind, you should be thinking linked records. Now, it's actually a best practice to maybe start with a linked record. So in this case, we've said, okay, our clients are, a single select. So in our case, our clients are a single select. But once we've done a few projects or we're creating a more complex workflow, we want to have a table that has all of the information around each one of those clients, but we don't want to lose that relationship to say that published blog post is for Stevens Construction Company. So what we can do is actually turn this single select into a linked record. So let's go ahead and take that single select, customize field type, and let's turn it into a linked record. Link to another record, and we're going to create a new table where we're going to store all of the information around all of these clients. So let's create a new table. Boom, we're calling this clients, and we're going to save. There we go. And now you'll notice that our grouping doesn't work anymore. If we go over to clients, we see all of those clients are now a primary field, are each a record in our new clients table, so we can track additional information. I said email, can create an email field. So example at airtable.com, let's just put some information here. And I have additional information around all of these clients that we're working with. So the distinction between a linked record and a single select field, single select field is great if you want to tag a record. So say this project has this status, has this content type, has this priority. However, once you start wanting additional information around that tag, name, address, things like that, specifically for a client, you can turn to a linked record while still having that relationship in place. Amazing. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat. Exactly. So an example, Chris, we'll get to lookups and things like that, additional things you can do once you've linked up. Amazing. Cool. Making sense so far? Give me a thumbs up in the chat. We're on schedule here. Drop some questions if you have them around single select versus lookup. Amazing. Cool. Boom. Okay, so that was question number 2. Absolutely. Boom, considering this one done. Confetti, amazing. Okay, can I automatically create linked records? Absolutely. Okay, that's a great, amazing third question. Can I automatically create linked records? So how I'm going to interpret this question is, let's say I always create the same records when something happens in my workflow. So if we go back to our creative projects example, let's say every time we create a video project, we want to create these 3 tasks. We got to write a script, we got to create the graphics, we got to record a video. So when your workflow has these recurring steps that you need to take, maybe when a tenant writes a contract, you need to do 4 or 5 things and you want to be able to track whether you've done those things. That's usually a situation where you want to create those linked records automatically. So first step is probably to create them manually. So in our case, what we did is when we created a training video, we would create those action items manually. However, we may want to automate that to say every time we create a training video or a video type piece of content, create these 3 action items automatically. So in Airtable, when you say out that sentence, when I do X, then do Y, that is usually a situation where you want to use Airtable automations. So when a project, a video project is in progress or has been prioritized, go ahead and create those action items automatically. When a tenant has signed their lease, go ahead and do these 3 things. Those are situations where you want to use Airtable automations. So let me open up my automations here on the top right. And let's create a custom automation. I want to create it from scratch. Let me move myself out of the way. Boom. Create a custom automation like that. Let's name this video action items. And so Airtable automations has kind of 2 parts that are related. First is a trigger. Triggers are what set your automation in motion. This is what needs to happen for your automation to run. So in that sentence I used before, for us, it's going to be when a video project is in progress, go ahead and do that. That first part, that's going to be our trigger. Now there's a few triggers, there's a few types of ways of saying that sentence, if you will. When a record matches conditions, when a record form is submitted, when a record is created. In our case, we're going to go ahead and use when a record matches conditions. So what this is saying is when a project is a video project and is in progress, go ahead and create those action items. If your workflow is when a form is submitted, send that person an email. Or when a record is updated, send a Slack notifications or remind those folks that they have a due date. So those are different types of triggers that you can use. There we go. So yeah, we're not limited to one thing, Chris. We can talk about linked records with automations. We're going to have an automation specific session soon enough. I'm not worried that we're going to run out of topics for a table talk. So let's go ahead and select our trigger. Boom. And then we want to know, where does the trigger live? So which table, which has the records that need to fulfill that condition to run the automation? So in our case, that's the content right here. And then we specify the condition. So let me go back to our content table. And what I said was, when a video project, so content type will have to be video, and status will have to be in progress, right? So those are the two criteria that our record has to fulfill in order for us to want to run the automation. So let's go ahead and add conditions. So what I just said is that when a record in our content table has status equal to in progress, I could have selected a few options here, but is what we need. Another condition, I need both to be true. So I'm going to use an and here. Content type is video. Now just a note, maybe you want to do is any of, and you want to trigger this on a few options. In our case, we just want to keep video. So I'm just going to do like this. That's a little confusing. Let's do this. Is video. There we go. So those are the conditions that a record needs to fulfill in order for this automation to run. Let's run a test. And what we see is that it's pulled out. I'm just going to go into that test field value. Let's go get the name. Create training videos 1 right here. And that makes sense, right? That's saying if we would have just created this new record and we would have set it in progress, set content video, we would have created, run this automation. So that's all great. Let me make this a little larger. Click done. Okay, so we have our first trigger, which is saying when a project has video and in progress, go ahead and run this automation. Now, actions are what you want the automation to do. So this could be a wide variety of things. It could be, let me go cycle through here, update a record. You can go to, let me go into full screen, give us a little bit more space. That didn't really help, did it? Go ahead and send an email, update something in Google Sheets, external applications as well. Send an Outlook email, Hootsuite, a bunch of examples that we could run with. In our case, we just want to create a record. So let me go back. So which table do we want to create a record in? In our case, that's the action items table. So let's go into action items. And then we can specify, do we know what some of the fields are? Well, in our case, if we look here, our first record is always going to be named write script. So let's go into action items. Let's choose a field, our name field. And we're going to call it write script. Next one is this linked record. And so what we want is this to be linked to the record that triggered the automation. So in our case, we want it to be linked to create training video to step 1. Now, whenever you want to associate or fill in information that's available in a previous step, you can click this plus button and go to step 1. And this is saying take information from the record that triggered the automation. So we're going to click that. And what I want is the name, insert that. It's going to go ahead and create that relationship between the task and the project that was just prioritized. And that's it. So those are the only 2 fields that we want to fill out. Let's click done. And we want to do that 3 times. So the next is we also want to create a record. So for each one of these template action items, we can go ahead and fill out that information. So I'm going to do this a little faster here. Let me know if there are any questions. Create graphics. I'm going to associate that to step 1. Boom. One last time. I'm going to go ahead and create record. In action items, we only have to do this once, and then we're automating a lot of work. Name is record video, so I'm just recreating these 3 template. Boom. Click done. And now the most important step that I forget every single time is to turn on the automation. Very important to click this on button. And now what we're saying with this automation is when a record is in progress and is tagged as video, in when record matches condition, go ahead and create 3 records. Now, always a little stressed out to run these on the stream. Let's go ahead and create a new record for, let's say, Stevens Construction Company. So we're calling this video training for safety procedures. Just going to stay with the construction theme. So let's say this is in progress. It's a medium. We're starting this 30th. Boom. And now, once I set this to content type is video, it's going to fulfill the 2 things we need. Let me move myself out of the way. Whew. Let's see if this works. Video, it's going to go ahead and run the automations. Video. Now, if we did this correctly, it went too quickly. Okay, I was gonna do this whole thing, but it created our action items automatically. So now we have our write script, create graphics, record video. We need like a confetti. There we go. And we have our action items automatically created. So this is perfect for when you have workflows at certain points that you need to create recurring action items. Woo! All right, we need some kind of horn. I'll next week we're gonna have a proper celebration when automation runs. So Stephen, good question around will this be available? Yes. So the instant this stream is done, it's available on the YouTube channel to watch again. Chime app, great idea. Love this. Keep them coming. Awesome. Okay. So, Holly, any questions? Amazing. Absolutely need air horns. Okay. Cool. Let me give a quick check on time-wise. We're about 3/4 of the submitted questions. Boom. Okay, how can you edit what you see in a list of linked records? Okay, this is a great question. So if I come back here and go to content and look at my client, let me remove Stevens Construction. Let me go to a view where we have all of our projects that is not grouped. Let's have a new project. You'll notice when I click this plus button, as we learned a moment ago, it's going to go ahead and pull up all of the information from our clients. Now, we have 4 clients today, but I'm sure a lot of folks here have hundreds or thousands of clients or tables with so much information, it becomes difficult to just scroll and find the link that you need. So what we want to do here is how do we edit this so that we make it easier to find the information that we need? So here, let's say one thing I could do if I had hundreds of clients, actually search on them. So let's say I search Barcelona. As I'm writing it out, it's going to go ahead and find that information. However, it only searches on the first field. So let's say I want to search example at airtable.com, which is one of the elements. I can't find it because it is not in our first field. So this one in bold. So the primary field is a special field. It's your first field in every table. And what happens is that you cannot hide this field. It is crucial. It's what indicates what's in the rest of the record. So sometimes you might have structured your tables incorrectly such that it becomes difficult to find the information that you need. So let me rejig this. Let's say I have Jeff, and this was Jeff at Airtable, and this was Hallie. But then I had a second client whose name was also Jeff. And let's say I had a last name, a single line text. I had Jeff Johnson, and I had Hallie. I'm terrible at this. I should not do this. Burks, sure. Jeff Shawnee. And then Rosie, is the name of my old cat. Binks, sure. You'll notice that I have two Jeffs. Now I can differentiate these Jeffs based on either the content that we're creating for them, or their address, or some other piece of information in this table. However, if I go and say I want to link this project to Jeff, well, that becomes a problem because I'm not sure which Jeff I should be linking to. So this will happen often when you start out and you have a piece of information that you use as your primary field, but then you have multiple instances of that. So your primary fields should be unique and informative. So you should be able to search on them. That's the informative part. So just a bunch of numbers doesn't really make sense. And they should be unique so that when you enter that information, you'll quickly be able to differentiate amongst the different records that you're linking to. So some folks in the chat are a little further ahead than I am. So let's go ahead and go back to our clients and try to adjust this. So I have the last name. Last name and first name is usually unique, right? So if there was a way to search on first and last name instead of just first name, well, that would really solve my problem. That would make this much more unique and informative. So let's go ahead and create a field that is first name. It's going to be a single line text. Create that field, move it here. Let me go copy paste all of this field. So I'm clicking Control C or Apple C on a Mac, moving that over here. And I have a blank here. So what I'd love this field to be is first name, space, last name. That way when I pull in the information, I pull in their first name, I pull in their last name, that primary field becomes unique and informative. So how do we do that? How do we take existing fields and concatenate them together to create a new field that is based off of those other fields? Well, whenever you have existing information that creates something new in your table, you should see here alarm bells ringing formulas. So that is the answer. Whenever you're taking existing information, maybe a due date and adding time or removing time, existing information, creating something new, that is when you use a formula field. So let's change our name here to be a formula. And what should our formula be? There's a few ways to write this. Synonym for concatenate. Merge, I guess? What is a good synonym? Let's concatenate. Is there one explanation here? Join together. The text arguments, that makes a little, I guess it was join together, different lines of text, right? Hey, Cherise, welcome. So what we want this to concatenate is the first name and the last name. So here I'm using the concatenate formula. There's another way that's just dropped. Someone suggested I'm going to do that right after. So I'm saying take the first name, and then as a second argument, I'm going to take the last name. So this should merge them together, join them together. Let's save that. Whoop. Okay, this looks a little weird, right? So they're too close. We need a little space here. So we can actually add as many arguments as we want. So let's say after the first name, we want a little space. So we're just gonna say little quotation marks, international sign for quotation marks, and bunny, we're gonna go ahead and add a space there. So this is just saying, take that space, add it between first and last name. Let's save that. Boom. So now we have our first and last name. Now this should be more informative. So if I go back to our content, I'm gonna associate this new project to the right Jeff, and I write out Jeff. Well, now I see that it's either Jeff Johnson or Jeff Shawnee. Now what's good about this is maybe I know which Jeff we're talking about. We're talking about Johnson. So I can search that as well because it's in our primary field. So if you remember one thing from this question, and maybe just from this string, make sure that your primary fields are unique and informative. How you do that is often using a concatenate or using a formula field that takes existing information and jumbles it together to create something that when you search on it, you're sure to find the right record. Now, I promise to show other ways to create that concatenate. Let me do that right now. So I know concatenate is a word that you might not remember. So an easier way to do this, and one that I actually prefer, is just by writing out the sentence and using ampersands. International sign for ampersand is this, I think, or it's my sign anyway. So first name and put that space and last name. There we go. If we save that, the output is going to be exactly the same. There we go. And now we have our formula field that is automatically created. There we go. Okay. So that is one way to change what is in the linked record right here. So the question is, how do you edit the list of linked records? So that was the first one, is how to make the search easier. I think the second part of this question, I'm hoping this question was from Wade. So Wade, hopefully this is, I'm interpreting your question correctly. Maybe what you meant was not how do I make the search easier, but how do I limit the records that are here? Again, if you have thousands of clients, after a couple of years, a few of them may have churned. They're no longer your client, or maybe they're no longer a tenant, or maybe you only want to see action items for projects that are in progress. So maybe you want to limit the records that show up here when you click the plus. You don't want to necessarily see all of the records from that table. So let's go to clients, and let's imagine, let's put that use case where we only want to see clients that are currently a client. Let's go ahead and go like this. And let's say I have a checkbox that says current client, checkbox. And everyone except Jeff Johnson is still my client, right? So now I only want to see these three options when I use that dropdown, when I add that project to that client. So how do we do that? How do we limit the list of linked records to records that fulfill a condition? Foreshadowing what I'm going to go do here. So let's customize that field type. And you'll notice that when you link to clients, there are two options here. We actually only want to have one client for each project. And second, we can limit selection to a view. Now, however, we haven't created a view that has those conditions. So let me go ahead and create a view. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to not save. Go to clients, create a new view that is current clients. Always better if you spell it correctly. Let's filter where current client is checked. So what this says is only show me clients where the checkbox current client is checked, meaning it is a client. Let's go ahead and go back to content. Let's do that one more time. Customize field type. Allow limit records to a view, current clients, and let's save that. So now, when I pull up this plus button, you'll see that there's only three records. There's only Hallie, Jeff, and Rosie. If I come here and say, you know what, Rosie or Jeff or Hallie, I don't know who to pick. A little stressful. Rosie. Rosie is out. No longer a client. I come back here. I only have those two records that are now available. So that is one way to add a little bit of validation to making sure that you're linking to the right record. So second tip that I hope you'll remember, make your primary fields unique and informative. And whenever possible, make sure you're limiting that linked record to the right subset of information so that as a user, as a collaborator, I'm sure that I'm pulling the right information or associating the right information from one record to another. Cool. Yeah, I feel bad. Let's put Rosie. Rosie should be a client. Let's give Rosie a chance here. Rosie's great. Okay, Rosie's back. Okay, whew. Okay, dokes. No worries. Cool. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, those are all of our pre-submitted questions. Okay. Great. How can I reorder linked records once I have a bunch already linked? So there's a question from Chris. This is where I'm rubbing my hands because I expect these to be a little bit, a little tougher, if you will. So it's still time. We're gonna try to get through these as quickly as possible, and then we're gonna do a lightning round. So let's go ahead and answer these as quickly. So Hallie, do you wanna do the lightning round now? Okay. Okay, let's answer Chris's and then we'll see. Okay, cool. So let me make sure I'm doing the right thing. Okay. Okay, lightning round. Okay, let's do it. So I've got a minute for each one of these. So drop them in the chat and I'm gonna answer each one of these in a minute. So the first question is, how can I reorder linked records once I've linked them? So the best way to do this is go ahead here and you can reorder them right there. So I'm gonna do that one more time, Chris. You go to that linked record, you open it here, and then you can manually rejig them, right? So they are by default ordered in the order that you link them. However, you could change that order here like that. So that is the only way to reorder your linked records. Boom, okay. Question one. I'm going to assume, Chris, that is done. Yes, that is the only way. Correct. So question from Coolbone. What is the limit? The limit, I don't think it's one of practical limitations, right? So you could have hundreds or thousands of linked records. So do I have a minute here? You're giving me a minute? 30 seconds, okay. Whew. So the limitation is not on the number of linked records. It is on the number of records globally, right? So on the whole base, the limit. However, you might hit speed limits if you have hundreds or thousands of records that are linking and pulling in and formulas and things like that. So limitation is not there. It's more on the base performance as well. So if you are creating a lot of linked records, make sure to optimize your whole base to optimize for performance. Not that there is a limit to the number of linked records. Obviously, the limit is also the number of records totally, right? So 50K, you can't have more than 50K linked records, but you're probably gonna hit some performance issues before that. So make sure that your base is optimized and only linking when you need to. Okay, I went over on that one. Okay, so question from Michaela, is it possible to link to only active projects? In that case, I would actually use, I have 15 seconds for this one. I would just use the limit to a view. So you can create a view that only has your in progress projects like we did right here. So create a view that has your in progress projects, and then you'll only be able to select from that view when you create that linked record. Oof, way over time. Okay, we're at 100%. All right. They're tough. They're tough. Okay. Amazing. Appreciate it. Great question, Michaelis. Kovon asks, what happens that you ask in the form and I'm not answered? So this is what happened. We're either going to prioritize them for a future session. So we had a lot of questions for automations, and we're going to prioritize that for the automations. If I can't answer your question, we're actually going to send it over to support to make sure that you do get an answer. So we want to make sure that your questions do get answered. So we're going to go ahead, drop a link to upcoming questions if you have them. Our next session next week is about apps. and then we're going to talk about fields generally. But really, we're welcoming all questions. We want to see what kind of questions you have, both so we can create new sessions that are tailored to those questions, and we got a sense of what are you asking? How can we help you learn more about Airtable? Are there any other questions that we haven't answered? So there's a lot of, you can write a script, I think, to change the order. So Quovon, if you can share that script, really appreciative. Batch update as well was one I missed. So there's things even sometimes that I miss. So really appreciate that. Great. I think we answered all of the questions. So appreciate, just drop the link to questions for the next session. And let me go ahead. Okay, we got some, I'm gonna go ahead and drop a link. Amazing, we do? I don't handle the swag, so go ahead and let, so Stephen, that's a great question. So you're saying, the question is, you know, if you have existing linked records in a sync table, they get passed as a single line text. I'll let the team know about that feedback. Yeah. So that is not possible today. They do get passed on as a single line text. Cool. All right, so who's our winner for our swag this week? Amazing. So Steven's our winner for swag this week. We're gonna reach out after the session to send over your Airtable swag. I personally would love to know the session. How did it go? How much did you enjoy this? Any feedback to make this session better? I would love to know. So I'm Aaron@airtable.com. Really appreciate all of you joining. I hope I will see you next week where we're gonna talk about, should I make sure I got this right, apps and then fields the following week. Please drop us, submit your questions in advance, whether about that topic or anything else you want to talk about with regards to Airtable. Ask us anything. So really appreciate all of you joining this session. I'll be back here, same place, same time next week, and I hope that you will be too. So huge thanks, Ash, Pam, Naya for coming, Naya probably, Stephen again, Ethan, Chris, Kovone, Michaela. Really appreciate all of you coming. I hope to see you back next week for some more table talk and some more Airtable learnings. With that, huge thanks again for coming, and I'll see you there.